Hello. So it's the year 2022, and people are finally saying, "Oh yeah, well, they've been saying this about 2020, 2021. The sequel trilogy sucks," without people flying off the handle for you saying the sequel trilogy sucks. So I don't think that I've ever actually done a video on why I think the sequel trilogy failed. I've done posts on why I think the character of Rey failed on my Tumblr, but I don't think I've ever just sat down and gone through movie by movie each one's failures and why they just were not a good series of films. And I've heard a lot of stuff online that I can't know whether or not it's true. I just heard it from other YouTubers. So I may or may not mention those things. So I'm just going to give my impression of what I got overall from this whole thing. And that was there was no plan. There was no overarching story. They did not sit down and figure out what story they wanted to tell over 3 films. They just sat down, did one movie at a time, and then kept changing directors. And that was bad. Because one director was J.J. Abrams, and the next one was Rian Johnson. Now, I've never seen anything else of Rian Johnson, so I don't know whether or not he actually is the hack he appears to be from his Last Jedi work. But I have looked at the aggregate critical reception to his films. I noticed that if you average out the reviews, critical scores, he gets a 6.7 or a 7, which is not a passing, which is barely a passing grade actually, in most places. So do with that what you will. I can only judge him on what I've seen of his, which is, unfortunately for me, Last Jedi. But I'm jumping ahead of myself by a film. So Force Awakens, I liked it when it came out because the nostalgia goggles blinded me. Blinded me so utterly that I didn't realize what I was watching was a rather poor version of A New Hope with fancy graphics. And I'm going to go through the plot beats without being specific. Can you tell me which belongs to A New Hope, which belongs to Force Awakens? We have an evil organization after plans stored in a robot. The robot gets away from the evil organization, but the person it was with gets captured. The robot then gets found by a desert dweller who's good at fixing things. Desert dweller kind of wants to leave the planet, but for obvious reasons, but for some reason, just cannot. After the droid gets away from Desert Dweller and gets into another scrape, Desert Dweller saves them. They wind up running into another person looking for the droid or stuff, and they wind up getting off the planet in the Millennium Falcon. Am I describing the opening of A New Hope with Luke's side of the equation, or am I describing Rey's trip to get off of Jakku? Oh yeah, there's also a space battle. And technically speaking, I was describing Rey. But all of these things could also work to fit what Luke did to get off of Tatooine in A New Hope. There are some slight variations, whereas the person Rey runs into is just as close as her. Luke runs into Obi-Wan Kenobi. Poe is actually alive after Finn and Poe's escape, but we don't know that for a while. And there's a whole BB-8 versus R2-D2 thing, and what R2-D2 had was, I think, a bit more significant than BB-8. Sorry, Luke, but a planet destroyer's blueprints are a little more important than the scavenger hunt of finding Luke Skywalker. Of course, I won't call that thing Luke Skywalker, but again, I'm jumping ahead of film. So yeah, the general plot per plot cloning of A New Hope, which is my favorite of the Star Wars films. Looking back on that now just annoys me more and more as years go by. And what also super duper annoys me is the fact that Finn, the character with the most potential, I thought, story-wise, gets sidelined after Force Awakens. Force Awakens, he goes through a whole huge thing of deciding the place he's been most of his life after being kidnapped as a child is not good, because they're going to have him shoot civilians. but is scared to go against them because he knows there might because he was on the inside. But eventually gets some courage to stand up to against the face of the First Order, Kylo Ren. And as a film, heroically trying to face down a man he is outmatched against. And that's, I thought, was a nice journey. And I thought, wow, I want to see where this character goes. But then Rey, out of nowhere, is able to fight off Kylo Ren, despite the fact that I'll give her the fact that Chewie shot the guy and he should have been dead in the side. Because a bowcaster should have done a lot more damage than it did. So I'll give the movie this benefit that at least Kylo was injured when Rey fought him, but still. Anyway, there's a Jedi mind trick thing, but Rey doesn't earn that because if she'd seen Kylo do that to somebody, maybe I could have bought her suddenly figure out the Jedi mind trick was a thing. But her being suddenly able to do it was like, Captain Phasma, they build her up and she just kind of goes down like nothing. Giant super weapon that can be destroyed by blowing up one specific thing, and this time they had to go bigger, so it was a freaking planet they converted, and I found out later that planet had been Ilum. I'm now kind of pissed because it was Ilum. But I digress. So this movie has no creativity, cannot stand on its own, and only ever did well because of nostalgia goggles. But it also set up false expectations of the fan base that, okay, fine, this was going to be just a cash grab nostalgia fest. And then along comes episode 8. The one that split the fandom in the first place. I will say this, for episode 8 does look nice. Cinematography is great, the effects are great. But that's all the nice things I can say about episode 8. When it came out, my initial thought to it, because it came out on the 40th anniversary year of Star Wars, was meh. That was my legit full reaction to episode 8, was meh. But then, I had a family gathering that year, and a cousin told me I was wrong for not liking episode 8. Like, he told me to my face that I was wrong for not liking episode 8. I'm a contrarian, so when you tell me that I have to like something, or else I'm wrong, I'm going to get mad. And I'm going to then dig my heels in and say, you know what, screw you, I'm never going to like this thing. Now, I wouldn't have liked 8 regardless, because I thought 8 was a giant meh, but then I suddenly had a reason to hate 8. And the more time goes on, I look back at 8, I still hate it. First of all, they had an opening scroll they didn't need because it was only 2 days later. And I did not like the fact that they decided to start the film 2 days later. It's like, why would you do that? Star Wars films have time gaps between them. It just makes sense. But nope, Ruin Johnson, as some of the people in the fandom call him, and I kind of had to like that term, decided that he was going to start right where the other one left off, so there's no need for an opening scroll, really. Could have just been previously in the sequel trilogy. That would have been a much more apt thing, instead of wasting your time with an opening scroll, because it just didn't need to happen. And let me get this out of the way. I know that Star Wars has explosions in space because it looks cool, but a lot of those I could excuse because those I could just count as nuclear explosions, which technically can happen sort of in space, but that's what a supernova sort of is. But bombs in space are stupid as fuck. Yes, I have just sworn I'm going to consider this a PG-13 video. It's not made for kids anyway. And therefore, it's just, no. I don't care if they're magnetic. A bomb in space is stupid. Proton torpedoes at least made sense. All the other stuff at least made sense, but freaking bomb being dropped in space. Unless it's an EM pulse thing, it's stupid. And then the fact that they just reverted any character development on Finn. He wakes up and he starts to try to run away. So everything he went through in episode 7 doesn't matter. He's back to being a coward. A runaway coward and the butt of all jokes. Especially in how he was introduced in the film. In that somewhat humiliating manner, after being somewhat so heroic at the end of 7. Yeah, let's just make him the clown. And let's just give him a random love interest too. Just because, even though there was chemistry between him and Ray, can't have that, especially for certain markets that have never liked Star Wars in the first place. Nope, can't have the black man be the romantic interest because of those markets. No, better push the toxic relationship between her and Kylo. That's the ticket. And then there's whole Canto Bite side quest that didn't need to happen. And the whole Roadrunner thing of, oh, they could track us through hyperspace. That was stupid. That was so stupid. Hyperspace tracking just ruins any of the potential for stuff in Star Wars because if the Empire has that, they're boned. Unless they manage to somehow speed away and then jump when they can't find it. Oh, wait, they can still track them. The whole traitor plotline might have worked better if they were wondering why they keep being able to follow us and then found out there may be a traitor tracking them, and then find out from Finn's like, oh, they do have that tech, and have it be something that the First Order developed and it's still prototype, so it doesn't work always, but it takes a lot of power, so it needs to be on the Superstar Destroyer thing, etc., etc. I mean, do something more interesting than, oh yes, we have this tracking technology now. So dumb. So dumb. Canto Bite was pointless, and I know that overly indulging nostalgia was bad for episode 7, but here they actually could have gotten away with bringing in a nostalgic character right in the middle of 8. When they talked about the guy they needed to find with the red palm bloom, I thought it was going to be Lando Calrissian, because Casino Planet, guy living the high life, I thought it was going to be Lando. That would have been the perfect place to put Lando. But no, it's some random dude they don't even get to meet and end up with Mr. I don't even know how to describe Benicio del Toro's character. I'm going to call him Mr. Plot Device in the prison. They didn't have to have the whole casino thing. They didn't have the whole free the Farth, whatever they are. I think they're called Farthiers thing. They could have just had them land and be arrested for parking violation. Because it would have gotten them to the same place and saved us 20 minutes of screen time. And shortened the stupid side quest. But, they had to do what they had to do. Which was awkwardly shoehorn in a statement about war profiteers. Which, they are scum. I will say that. But still, you shouldn't have had to shoehorn that stuff in. Don't mind that. Phone's ringing. Gosh, if I keep going through all the things that are wrong with episode 8, I'm going to be here all day. So, let's just keep going through the parts I disliked about 8 the most. And that being, that was not Luke Skywalker. That was not Luke. I still see the good in my genocidal maniac father, Darth Vader Skywalker, who's like, oh no, I sense a little bit of darkness from Ben. I better kill him. And then fail to kill him. I mean, what the hell? Luke saw the good in Darth Vader. There's no way Ben, whose hands are clean of any murders at this point, should have been enough to trigger the murder instinct. But they had to destroy Luke Skywalker so Rey could come in and be better than him. Who really didn't need the training from him in the first place. Because obviously, that's how the Force works, No, that's not how the Force works, to quote Han from 7. The only line that has any accuracy at all from 7. And it's just the whole thing with Luke Skywalker in 8 just ticked me off so much. Because Luke's my favorite character. He's always been my favorite character. My second favorite character is R2-D2. And the fact that he was also sidelined most of the time also ticked me off. And it just didn't make sense. It cheapened anything from the original trilogy. It cheapened all the character development the characters had. It just made things cheap. And there's the whole thing with the Force projection of, once again, that's not how the Force works. If that was how the Force works, why would the Jedi even have had to be on the front lines in the Clone Wars? Couldn't they have projected themselves from Coruscant? Oh, sorry, I brought logic into a movie that has no logic to it whatsoever. And no respect for the past, anyway. It's just a film that also had part of its lines be destroy the past, or forget the past, burn it if you must, or destroy it if you must. was like almost like the director looking right at the audience and flipping us the bird. So let's go to the worst of the three. I may dislike Last Jedi a lot, but I actively despise Rise of Skywalker. Not only was the corporate backpedaling palpable in 9 after the divisive reaction that 8 brought about, but the inconsistency within even in its plot just was so dumb. So they broke up Rose and Finn, whose romance came out of nowhere and was kind of pointless anyway, because of the backlash on Rose. They minimized Rose's involvement in 9, which again was because of the backlash on Rose. Her character could have been better, but eh. But then they doubled down on the stupid Kylo Ren Rey romance. They doubled down on a whole bunch of other stupid crap, and it just doesn't help. Making Rey a Palpatine just didn't help. It would have been better had they stuck with Johnson's idea of Rey is no one. Child of no one. Or better yet, from what I've heard at one point, rumor has it she should have been a Kenobi. Well, she was going to be a Kenobi, and I think she should have been. Because it makes sense. Anywhere in the galaxy, if the Skywalkers screw something up, Kenobi fixes it. But that's just me. I have an actual respect for the past, so why would that even matter? And it's just one of those things that I, as a writer, can now take solace in the fact that I will never write anything so stupid as somehow Palpatine has returned. So some people may think 8's the worst, but 9 just is the crap cherry on the crap cake. Because 9, in its backpedaling, winds up being more inconsistent and its attempts at pandering more insulting. Sure, bring back Lando now where it doesn't make sense. Sure, bring back Palpatine because they let Johnson kill Snoke. And they didn't want to make their romantic male interest evil. And honestly, if they just left Kylo full evil, that actually might have helped 9 a bit. But instead, they had to bring back Palpatine, so Kylo just wasn't as bad as the actual big boss, who was Palpatine all along. Bringing back Palpatine also pisses on Episode 6 and the original trilogy altogether. Just straight out, like a dog lifting its leg and just pees. Because it makes Anakin's sacrifice at the end of Episode 6 pointless. The most powerful moment in the original trilogy, I think, Anakin's redemption. And it goes, you know what, I'm going to piss all over that and let's have Palpatine come back. Especially after they basically stole that concept from an EU book, which they decanonized to make their sequel trash. So not only did they ruin the original trilogy, they didn't even do it with their own idea. They stole the idea from somewhere else to ruin the original trilogy with that idea of cloned body. I'm not touching on the stuff that I know was in the novelizations, because if I have to read your dang book to understand your film, you did not do a good job making your film. Because when you choose a storytelling medium, you have to tell your story in that medium. Time material should be ancillary, not crucial to understanding the full context. Or supplemental. It should not be part of understanding the movie. So finding out that there was stuff about explaining Canto Bight in the Last Jedi novelization, don't care. I shouldn't have to read your stupid book to understand your stinking movie. Finding out that, oh, well, Rey's dad was Palpatine's clone who got away from getting body snatched. I don't care. That should have been in your stupid movie. And any other crap they explain in the novelization, I don't care. Should have been in your stupid movie. Like, the planet they destroyed in 7 is some planet I've never heard of called Hosnian Prime. I originally thought it was Coruscant, but they wouldn't let JJ do that apparently, so. Still, the fact that they decided just to blow up the New Republic like that was stupid. And again, pissed all over the original trilogy's goals of restoring the Republic, because that's what the Alliance's full name was, Alliance to Restore the Republic, just so they can have a sequel trilogy starting off the way the original trilogy did, which was big bad large group versus little rebel fighters. And they stopped calling themselves the Resistance after the end of 8. They started calling themselves the Rebellion again for... Like, come on. Why would you do that? I mean, if I had been hired by someone getting a stroke or something like that, hey, let's hire this person who hasn't gotten a single professional writing credit to come and write our sequel trilogy, I would have planned out 3 different story arcs to go through for the fact that it would be a trilogy. And I would not have set it anywhere near the time of Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Leia Organa. I would have actually just gone far into the future, like some of the EU books have done, and just gone from there. And that would have put enough separation between the events of the original trilogy and the events of the sequel trilogy to keep people from getting mad. You can still do nostalgic callbacks because droids can last a really long time if they're maintained, so you still could have had the droids there. You could have had Force Ghosts. You could have had holographic recordings if you wanted to bring in as much nostalgia as possible. And thanks to certain characters from Mandalorian, Grogu being one of Yoda's species, or as people call him, Baby Yoda, or the child, Grogu being of Yoda's species, Yoda lived to be over 900. So if you wanted a character to connect a proper sequel trilogy far away from the events of the sequels, or better yet, just adapt the EU, which you've turned into Legends, Disney. But if you want to do your own original thing without adhering to the EU while using the characters that you created for your Star Wars, just set it in the far future, at least 100 years or more, and have Grogu be your only connection between then and now. Would that give away that Grogu can't die in The Mandalorian and other stuff? Yes. Yes, it would. But it would also decanonize the sequel trilogy, which, in my books, should happen. Because, and this is where I have to really get on the soapbox, there is no story potential with the sequel trilogy. No one cares about what happens to Rey, name thief Skywalker, after the end of the sequel trilogy. And Daisy Ridley doesn't want to come back. That I've heard online too. And I can't blame her. So there's no future with Rey. There's no future with any of the characters from the sequel trilogy because Rey was all the one they put their eggs in the basket for, and her actresses would come back, and they kind of tainted a whole bunch of stuff with her character, with how they handled her character. And here's another little side tangent. How sexist is it that their female protagonist's arc revolves around a man, whether it be her grandfather, Palpatine, or her love interest, Kylo Ren? Like, how sexist is it that this strong, independent woman is wholly dependent upon a man because her character arcs revolve around that man? But there is no future for Rey. There's no one gives a damn. There's no future for Finn because they ruined his character so thoroughly. There's really no future for Poe because they ruined his character so thoroughly. There's no future for the sequel trilogy characters. Which means they spent all that time and money building up these characters and no one gives a damn about their future. I'm sure some little kids do because little kids like anything. No offense to little kids because they're little kids. But no one really cares about any of that. So they have basically created a narrative dead end. If you go into the far future and you leave a lot of the stuff from the New Republic a mystery, like you have the characters living either in the Outer Rim or the Wild Space or in the ruins of something else, like you could have a ruined galaxy in the far future and you could have your characters piece together what happened, so we as the audience learn with them what happens to the legacy of the characters we love without pissing on them. And that would have been a far better approach. I have an idea, I think I outlined in the post, where I think that should have taken place at least 100 years past the original trilogy. I hadn't watched Mandalorian yet, so in this idea, I ignored Grogu's existence completely. And you have characters trying to find Luke Skywalker's tomb, because there's allegedly some sort of MacGuffin hidden in his tomb that could give the current bad guys a leg up, and in the 100 years since, the fragments of the Empire have turned into one faction and are threatening the New Republic. And so people have to go on this quest to find out where Luke Skywalker's tomb is, and that's why you have to hunt down R2-D2, because rumor has it that the droid has a location of Luke Skywalker's tomb, so it becomes a scavenger hunt within a scavenger hunt. And then it could have just gone from there. And I had it fully fleshed out, but still, that is already an original idea that uses stuff from the original stories without completely plot beat by plot beat lifting it. But that requires creativity. And corporate people have no creativity. All they see are, is this a secure thing? And do I have dollar signs already baked in from an audience that likes this stuff already? And that's really, honestly, where I'm going to leave this. Well, my last point I'm going to make is the reason the sequel trilogies suck, each film sucks, is there is no creative outlets whatsoever. There's no creativity in these films whatsoever. Some people will claim that 8 had creativity. No, what 8 had was a gleeful disregard for anything that came before it to do subversion. And that's one of those things that I want to walk over to Hollywood and grab that word from the vocabulary of every single screenwriter and lock it up and tell them they can have that back when they actually understand what subversion is. To subvert expectations. Yeah, they need to, that word needs to be taken from them and they need to earn the right to use it back. Because I'm sick of them doing the subverted expectations thing. No, you did a rug pull. You did a bad rug pull at that. So, yeah. 8's nothing but a bunch of rug pulls and talking points and no creativity really to be found aside from the fact that I do kind of like the idea of Rey being no one, but I did much prefer the idea of Rey being Kenobi. Because, again, if Skywalker screws up the galaxy, Kenobi's gotta fix it. So, what can we learn from the failure of the sequel trilogy? Well, it has been confirmed across different sources that the sequel trilogy had no overarching plan. So, step 1 is always have a plan. Always know what you're going to go, where you're going to go with the story, always know what you're going to do with the story, just have a freaking plan. Step 2, if you're working with a nostalgic intellectual property, you do not go out of your way to piss off the fan base. Like, if you make a film they don't like, you don't go and say, well, you're a bunch of man babies for not liking my film. Looking at you, Ruin Johnson. You go and say, fine, I understand why you don't like the film, but I stand by what I made. That's all you have to do. You don't go and antagonize the fans. And you don't go insulting fans for liking stuff either. Looking at you, writing group. You respect the past, but you don't have to be enslaved to it. Because Force Awakens was completely and totally enslaved to the past and therefore had no creative bones left in its body once you take anything it stole from A New Hope out, which is a lot of it. The only things original about Force Awakens are Rey was abandoned by her parents, not orphaned. BB-8 looks like a freaking soccer ball. It's the hotshot pilot captured, not the princess. Defector Stormtrooper. You know what? I can't think of anything else original. Old Wise Alien, that's basically Yoda, but with weird goggles. Sorry, Maskanata, I did like that character. It's funny, I'm crapping on one of the characters I actually did like from the sequel trilogy, but still, she's just Yoda with the funny goggles. Yes. So yeah, it's a criminal lack of creativity in their own vision. And a lack of respect in how they treated Han and Luke especially to empower their new characters. You don't have to disgrace the old to prop up the new. I don't know why they don't understand this in Hollywood. You don't have to make the old ones cynical and disgraced for the new characters to show up and be optimistic and the heroes. Especially if you're planning on just killing them off stupidly, like they do with Luke. Like, it's one thing if it was in their character and it was a really actual proper in-character event to set them off course. But it's just, there's no... If you have contempt for what you're making, the contempt shows through, and the contempt for Luke Skywalker bleeds through the screen if you watch Episode 8, which, after being forced to see it twice when it came out, I have not done since. And no one can make me watch it again. So, yeah. Respect the past, but don't be a slave to it. Have a plan, because people can tell when you don't. Because rumor has it, didn't even have a freaking plan while filming 9. Which explains why 9 feels just so discombobulated. Because they didn't have a plan while they filmed 9. Oh yeah. And if you think Subversion can make up for actual good storytelling, I would like to smack you with a dictionary over your head. So is there a hope for Star Wars? Well, Mandalorian's doing okay. I watched it, I liked it. I've not seen Book of Boba Fett, but I've heard mixed reviews. But I think the brand is damaged. After all the ill will caused by people getting mad at fans and antagonizing them, it's tainted things. I used to watch A New Hope at least once a year, and I haven't watched it in a while because knowing that everything that happens after A New Hope has been tainted by that terrible sequel trilogy, it just makes the original trilogy pointless. Because the plots have basically said, you know what, all that stuff you cared about, it's nothing. That republic you were rooting for them to found, that empire that we're rooting for them to topple, yeah, it means nothing in the end. That character whose hero's journey you watch, he winds up being nothing in the end. That character whose redemption arc you watched, his sacrifice means nothing in the end. That's really what the sequel trilogy is for me. They're kind of nothing. So, with this overly long rant video out of the way, I'm going to end this video of talking to the void. And if you're wondering what I'm doing, folding paper cranes, that's because I'm trying to get to 1,000 of these for personal reasons. And I figured it'd be nice to have my hands busy because that could help keep me on track a little bit. It helps a little, but this was a rant. And rants go all over the place. So that's where I'll leave you for today. It's talking to the void sound.